What up, everybody? This is A-Trak, and you're tuned in to the Sugarhill Gang Podcast.
What's up, everyone? This is the Sugarhill Gang Podcast, and I am your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, T Dynasty and Hen Dog. T Dynasty, tell us what the show is all about.
Peace and blessings to the ever-expanding family. Once again, we're here to celebrate and explore music, film, art, and culture as the roots of this thing we call hip-hop. We're always reaching out to speak to and share stories with our brothers and sisters in the industry. Some things known, other things we're going to figure out. But it's always going to be good, so sit back and we might learn yourself.
All right, and Hen Dog, who do we have on the show today? Dig. What?
Hey, world, all I can say is you better get your popcorn ready because we got a special guest today. I mean, this man is super bad. I mean, I can't even think of a word to describe him yet. That's how bad this guy is. I mean, get ready for our special guest today, the one and only DJ A-Trak. And I expect my check in the mail.
Yeah.
What's up, man?
Good intro. What's up, gentlemen?
How you doing, A-Trak?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great, man. Great, man.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh man. Hey, look, man. We admire your work. We know you're the man. We got a lot to talk about, but give us a little head up, man. Give folks a heads up, man. Let them know what you got going on, and for the ones that might not know.
Yeah,
right. For the people that might not know,
just sort of what I'm about.
Yes.
Yeah. So okay, I'm primarily a DJ. But I'm a DJ, producer, remixer, record label owner. Grew up in Montreal, Canada, and started making noise when I won some battles when I was a teenager. So in 1997, I was DMC World Champion at the age of 15, which is a record. And in the next couple of years, I won a couple more battles. I ended up having five World DJ Champion titles. And then since then, I went on to other projects. I DJed for Kanye West for a couple of years at the beginning of his career. And I went on to start a record label called Fool's Gold, and started producing music myself. And that's been sort of the last 15 years or so. My career has been my own productions and remixes, and bringing to really connecting the hip hop world with the EDM world and the festival scene, and kind of trying to bring DJing to the big stage, but all throughout bringing my skill set of a battle DJ to all these different stages that don't always see that kind of stuff nowadays.
Yes, and doing it on a high level. And like I said, man, we were talking earlier before the show started. I mean, you got a setup that's incredible, man. Like, I'm like, whoa, man. Like, it was phenomenal, man. It's definitely phenomenal. So here's the other question I have for you. Tell me your Rapper's Delight story, your first experience, when you fell in love with, the music, when your experience with Rapper's Delight. Tell us that story.
All right. So, I mean, I was born in '82, so I wasn't around when Rapper's Delight first came out.
Right.
And really, I got into hip hop in the sort of mid '90s, I would say. I grew up in Canada, grew up in Montreal, and during the '80s, when I was just a little kid, I wasn't familiar with hip hop yet. But by '92, '93. I started hearing some records that I was really interested in. And so, by the mid '90s, I was fully in love with hip hop. And the way that happened was, I have an older brother. He and I still make music together. So my brother Dave and I, it's just the two of us, and we've always listened to music together. And he was playing in bands and had friends that were doing music too. So when him and his friends were discovering new music, they sort of passed it on to me. I was the little brother just grabbing tapes and taking stuff to my room and listening and studying. So when they all started listening to hip hop, originally it happened through groups like the Beastie Boys and Cypress Hill, because we were listening to rock before. So if you're a kid listening to rock and then you hear Beastie Boys, even 90s Beastie Boys. We missed out on License to Ill. I'm talking about Check Your Head, So What You Want, those records. That caught our ear, like, oh, this is cool. You know, and there was a fashion thing with sort of, they were dressed like skaters. It was a whole culture thing going on. But once that brought us into hip hop and we started hearing other hip hop records, we quickly got a sense that when you discover hip hop, you also need to discover the history and the lineage. I'm not even sure what gave us that sense. Maybe it's even some of the records that we listened to then that would name drop, you know, the OGs, right. And we wanted to know where everything was from. And I remember we had this one friend who was kind of a record collector. We were all just teenagers, young teens, but one of our friends was buying a bunch of records. And he would tell us, well, you need to know this record, you need to know that record. And it's in that context that I remember hearing Rapper's Delight in the same sort of breath as you need to know this, but also it's the music from Chic Good Times, but there's also Grandmaster Flash, The Message, but da-da-da. And then I had another friend who would play me Run DMC. And you know, because we were discovering everything later on and in a different country, sometimes it wasn't even in chronological order, but it was just this like awe and amazement of these magical records. Because I think there's something about Rapper's Delight that, like, it doesn't matter if you even fully know hip hop, it doesn't matter if you discover it the year it came out, there's something very magical about that song. And it has like so much personality and charm, and the, you know, and it's a long record, and you end up wanting to learn all the raps by heart, and the storytelling, and the chicken tastes like wood, and all those lines. Like, you just, you know, you start telling the lines to your friends and stuff. I remember just going through that when I was like 12, 13 or so.
Yeah, and you know, the crazy thing about Rapper's Delight is that I always tell people that it's one of those projects that it was just destined to be. You know what I mean? It's like everything connected to that song was divine intervention. You know, the three of us coming together, you know, the music being the way the length that it was, you know, what who said what, did what. You know, it's one of those things. I mean, you know, you produce, so you know there are times when it's just a cosmic situation, man, and you know, you get an idea, and you know, it goes with another thing, and somebody brings something else into the equation, and then you got this body of work that now just has, like you said, it's got that spirituality and that magic that it just never goes away. As a matter of fact, it's like wine; it really does get better with time, you know, and that's what we're experiencing, you know, with just our whole catalog. Is that, you know, like the more the decades that it continues to go into, the music just becomes richer and richer, which is the beauty, because you're a producer and you're a music person. So I'm sure you understand what I'm saying by that.
Yeah, definitely. And I just think there's something about that era where it feels like lightning struck. Like there's certain records that just feel like they were touched. You know, I was actually talking to Arthur Baker the other day, and we were talking about Planet Rock. You know what I mean? And my friend and I were interviewing him, and we were both saying, like, Planet Rock is one of those records that no matter when you listen to, like, it just feels like it's otherworldly. Like it just you could play it to a kid now and their jaw will drop. Like, what planet is this from? And I think some of those early hip hop records all had, you know, I know it's not the same year as Rapper's Delight, but still that era in general, there was so much invention in the air. Like it just felt like something fell from the sky. And I got that impression listening to the records 10 plus years later.
Well, you know what I think it is too, man, is because, like you said, because it was the threshold of the experience. You know what I mean? There was so much organic energy that was being contributed. It's like with a lot of with R&B, let's say you kind of already know what the ingredients are gonna be. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, like you know, a love song. I mean, everybody's gonna do a love song. There's 1,000 ways to do a love song, but you already know it's about love. You know, but when it came to the beginning, and like you said, from us all the way through the Planet Rock and Rakim and running them, and you know, and all of that, all the way up into there was so many, like I call them astronauts. Like we were astronauts bringing it into the world. You know what I mean? Like we were astronauts and we landed on another planet. You know what I mean? And then you know, running them was astronauts because they landed on a different plane. You know, and MC, because I just talked to MC Hammer the other day on Clubhouse. You know, he landed,
Oh, cool.
and it was something else. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And, you know, so it was like all of these, you know, astronaut / aliens were bringing this ideal to, you know, this thing, you know, that really people didn't even understand, even when Running Them was coming out. They still, you know, that early Curtis Blow, Sugarhill Gang, Houdini, Furious 5 era, people still didn't get it, even when Running Them was doing it. They were like, well, what is this? You know what I mean? It didn't really start becoming a fixture in society and the world till the late 90s. You know what I mean? Once it really started getting embedded in corporate, and it started being, you know, mainstream movies, and, you know, moving on Will Smith and, you know, the Fresh Prince, that really helped hip hop a lot. People don't really understand that. But, you know, Will Smith's movie, Will Smith doing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air really brought hip hop into people's living rooms.
Yep.
So,
you know, but you seem to have blended all of these things right from the start, right into your you know, the electronic and the melt is, I mean, working across the board with, like, I see my boy Todd Terry and Kanye, you know, like that's a do you feel that you found that bridge?
I think so. And that, you know, that ended up becoming one of the things that sort of defines what I stand for. You know, like in the early years of my career, I was known as just the young Jack, the young guy that was winning battles, you know, and it was just the age thing. And that was cool. That was, I mean, I'm proud of those achievements, and I'm proud of the statements that made by, you know, coming in at an unexpected age. But there's later on what became even more important to me, also because you don't stay young forever. Another thing that became really important to me was those bridges, you know, because for some reason, there's something about the timing that I came in on the scene. A lot of things were changing. I mean, my career really spans, like, I straddled the change from analog to digital. You know, like I was getting into music when people started having Pro Tools at home, and I was the first DJ to endorse Serato ever. So
really,
yeah. That's all.
Wow.
That's the whole story too. We could get to that in a sec. But
I mean,
what I was gonna say is, just for whatever combination of reasons, I found myself able to build bridges, whether it be between the older generations and the newer generations, or whether it be between hip hop and electronic music. I'm just as comfortable swimming in all those seas, and I have friendships in all those worlds. So the more time went by, the more I realized that that's kind of a unique position to be in. So I build on that.
Yeah, that's quite obvious, man, in your performances. You know, like we talked about, you know, that Bobby Caldwell thing, that joint you do with the Bobby Caldwell.
Yeah.
Oh my God, is that not one of the best damn songs in the world, man? I mean, I've heard it in so many different. Oh my God, I've heard it in so many different. What inspired you to put it together the way that you did? That's what I want to know, because I heard it, and you started blending in some. Talk about that.
Okay, thank you, by the way. Thank you. So that's a routine that you saw on probably on my YouTube or my Instagram that I did last year. And really, I was recreating the beat for Common, The Light.
Wow. Yes, that's where I first got hip to. Well, I knew the Bobby Caldwell song, but I got hip to it listening to the Common song. Then I went back and checked out the original joint, and then I was watching you. And so go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that's what I was doing, and you know, got to give a dedication to Jay Dilla, one of the greatest producers that ever lived. You know, he flipped that beat. You know what I mean? So I was always a big Dilla fan, and I love the Common record. And like you mentioned, I just think that was, you know, one of the most beautiful soul records. And so last year, when quarantine, when lockdown started with COVID, I you know, stuck at home like we all were, and I started experimenting with different kinds of equipment and different routines. And it was the first time in a long time that I had a chance to experiment with my equipment again. The way that I did when I used to when I was first starting to scratch, just without any scheduling obligations, just schedules free, everything's clear, let's play around. And I started playing around with this drum machine that Roland makes. There's a drum machine called the TR-8S. Yes. And they made it in a way that you can sync it with Serato. So I played with this setup where I could make drum beats on the drum machine and play loops and samples on my turntables, and they could sync up. And so I started playing around with live production that way. And what I ended up doing was coming up with a couple of little routines where I would recreate beats or just flip samples. And that's the context that I flipped the Bobby Caldwell record, where I was playing with this equipment and just thinking of what are beats that I can flip. And so it was inspired by the Dilla beat for Common, but then I flipped it to a house tempo. So I sped it up, but just, took the same part that Dilla sampled, and and just kind of, and then from there just explored, had fun with it.
Yeah.
Right.
You were young. You started out famous, and you became successful at a very young age. You said 15.
Yeah.
I also, started out famous at a very young age. I was 17. You know what I mean?
I was going to ask you. I didn't actually know how old you were when.
I was 17. I was 17.
Which is young.
Which is very young. Yeah. Especially to have that kind of fame. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean by that kind of fame. You go from being the average everyday kid trying to figure out how to get a date to literally, you basically, people think you walk on
which
water.
I hadn't figured out. Yeah. Yes.
Neither did I. So trust me. So talk about that, man. What do you think the pros and the cons? I want to get your take on that. What do you think the pros and the cons of that are?
Yeah. As far as getting some sort of fame at a young age, I don't even know if I fully understood the effect of it until later, positive and negative. I knew what I was doing. I practiced my ass off for months and months, and I was very dedicated to my craft, and there's no way around that. And I was aware that I was winning these battles, and I was aware that it was different. There was no one that young that was being accepted in the battle scene till I did it. But I still think there's a piece of it that didn't fully register for me until later. But I mean, thinking back, I think I definitely think there's something about the innocence of being a young teen when you jump into projects. I think the advantage was, like, I didn't really second guess myself. I think the older you get, the more you understand the weight of things.
Right,
and if something goes wrong, what does that really mean? When I was 15, I was just like, I'm going to go to this battle and do my routine, and I hope I win. Simple as that. And then I win the Montreal battle, and then they tell me, cool, the next one's the Canadian finals. So then it was as simple as, I'm going to practice really hard, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to do my best. Then I win that, and they say, you got to go to the World Championships. And then it's like, okay, I got to get permission from my school to miss a couple of days because this thing's in Italy, but I'm going to practice really hard and go there and do my best. It was as simple as that. And like,
yes,
I think I have a competitive spirit, but like, those thoughts weren't clouded by self-doubt. Right. It was just like, let's go. Like, I was just at that age where it's like, let's go have fun,
Yes.
And so I think that was definitely the positive, was just like seeing it as just a fun hobby that I was really passionate about, enamored with. I took it seriously, but still the fun was the main part of it. On the negative side, any negative, I would say with a grain of salt, because I'm grateful for the way things played out, and I think the positive far outweighs the negative. I mean, I do think that
absolutely.
But you suddenly have to learn how to deal with the level of fame, pressure, professionalism, doubters and haters, like everything. It goes from zero to like maximal in your face,
Right.
and so whether it be, there's definitely a sense of responsibility that you just have to know how to activate, where suddenly you're getting hired for shows, you got to be on time, you got to stay on top of stuff, but you also got to stay on top of the rest of your life. And I was in school at the same time, so level of responsibility jumped very fast for me. And everyone had something to say, and I had to build thick skin very fast, because a lot of people were like, he just won because he's like a cute little kid or whatever. It's not
Cute,
serious.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I had to learn how to deal with that and learn how to have a plan to just keep it going. And to, you know, my mission for those next couple of years was to make it undeniable, to win more titles, so that if someone felt like they could say something slick about me winning one thing, if I win 3, 4, 5 things, they can't really say anything else. So, you know, so it's just like going straight into that mindset, you know. And then on some life shit, I think that later on you sort of realize like, oh, well, there's certain, you know, certain normal things that happen to people at that age that you sort of skip out if you choose to follow a profession. But you know, that's just, I just think that that's something that, as long as you're aware of it and you you know, you do the work later on, it's fine.
Right.
I think one of the biggest things about, like you said about it, is that you don't realize it's happening when it's happening. The pros and the cons, you just don't get it because you're so wild. You know, it's like you said, at 15, at 17, you know, the world is your oyster. So, you know, and then you got this pill and you got this gem. So you're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to run with it. It doesn't really hit you until you're older. It's like, you know, now I'm looking at it and I'm looking at all of the different angles. And the thing that I think most happens is that it distorts your sense of real life, and you don't get a chance to really understand real life till you get older. So yeah,
absolutely.
And you have a question?
What I was going to ask you, man, is
and you got a question?
Basically, I know that I admire the fact that you said when you went out there, you know, competition is competition. And anytime you're in competition with somebody, you want to try to outdo everybody. You know, that's the idea that's in your head. But I love the fact that when you went out there, you said you're not going to try to compete. You're just going to get out there and just do you. And then just let the cards fall where they may. You know what I'm saying? So I respect that about you. But my question is to you, once you, what led you to the turntables, first of all, and who were some of the people that inspired you, that you listened to get you to the point where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, at that point in time, you know, like I was saying, the sort of early to mid 90s, you know, as a fan of hip hop, you would hear scratching on records, you know? So I think everybody my age who was listening to hip hop had a vague awareness of scratching. And you know, for me,
who some of your heroes? Who were some of your heroes? Yeah.
I was listening to DJ Premier. I was listening to Pete Rock. Some of the, you know what I mean? And they had the best scratches on all their records. So you know, one day I just tried to scratch on my dad's record player. It was a belt drive turntable. We didn't have a mixer, but it was, you know, it was something. I think everyone tries that at one point, but most people try it and it sounds like complete garbage. And for some reason, when I tried it, it didn't sound like complete garbage. Like there was something that I figured out right away where I could just catch, you know, a snare drum fill or something that had an attack. I noticed like, oh, this sounds kind of rhythmic and kind of cool. And I found a switch on the amp that would cut the sound on and off. It wasn't a fader, but it was something. And I started figuring out how to do a few scratches by myself. And started with that. And then, you know, my brother and his friends, they saw me do that and they were just like, how come he can do this? Like they were older than me and they were just like, none of us can do what's going on here? So one of my brother's friends was like, oh, you like scratching? You should listen to this. So he gave me Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. He's the DJ, I'm the rapper. He gave me that cassette that had scratches on the whole album. So I was listening to that. But then by then it's like 95 or so. And I started finding out about some of the newer DJs who were revolutionizing scratching. Qbert, Mixmaster Mike, Rock Raider, Mr. Sinister, you know what I mean? The Beat Junkies, D-Styles, all these DJs who were, you know, scratching went to a whole other galaxy. They took it to outer space in those years, and they were intentionally making it really experimental and psychedelic. So my mind exploded when I heard those records too. There was a compilation that came out around that time that was called Return of the DJ, and it was a compilation that a San Francisco independent label put out, and it was all just DJ records. And I got that as well. And I would just listen to these songs. I just had all these examples of scratching. Because the thing was, I wanted to be a DJ, but I was 13. I was too young to get into a club. So I wanted to be a DJ, but I couldn't even see a DJ. And the internet wasn't even really, like, the internet existed, but it was slow. 95 was slow speed. So all I had access to, I had to do research. So I would listen to records that had scratching solos on them. And then I found out that you could buy the VHS tapes of the other battles. And I started studying videos. And I was just trying to, it was like, if there's some sort of, like, how like during wars, like they would like encrypt messages, like if someone has to decrypt some sort of code and you have to like decrypt a hidden language. That was my job. I had to decrypt scratching. It was this secret language.
What those fingers were doing. Yeah,
what hand is doing what. And the thing that was funny was, so I was doing, a lot of this decoding by myself. So a lot of times I'll be trying to break down one scratch and I would get it wrong and I would end up inventing another scratch. And then later on I would say, oh no, wait, that's what they were doing. And I would end up with even more. I would call it a vocabulary. I was building a vocabulary of scratching. My whole foray into hip hop started with scratching, and then I learned how to DJ in a broader sense. And then 10 years later, I got into production and everything else that people know me for now. But it started from the most specialized, tip of it.
So your parents supported you from the very beginning. They didn't say, boy, put this stuff down and get to your homework.
They supported me because I was serious about my homework. And if anything, they would just say, put your headphones on. This stuff is noisy. But, but as long as I could get my schoolwork done, they allowed it. And, my brother helped me sort of explain some of this to them too. He would say, hey, he's doing something that's pretty special. So they would say, okay. So my dad straight up told me, he said, if you keep your grades up, you can do this stuff. Because I was a pretty good student. So I kept my grades up, and I kind of separated my time. There would be certain hours a day when I would be scratching, other hours I'd be doing my homework. And so even that from an early age, I had to build a sense of responsibility, which probably helped later on when all this stuff became a business.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely,
man.
I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
You got 30 seconds to a minute to catch your audience's attention as soon as you hit. What is your procedure? What's your game plan?
Well, it really depends what kind of event it is. Do you mean like when I first jump on?
Whatever you pick the place, you pick the situation, but the scenario is 30 seconds to a minute to get them.
Yeah.
To get them.
I mean,
what do you do?
Yeah, to get them. I'm lucky that I know how to scratch, so that's what I'll do. It's not even a question of what record I pick. If anything, I might pick I might pick a song that they know, whatever's a song of the moment, but I'll just cut it up. But the thing that I learned with time is, like, when I used to do these battles and it was all about, who could do the most complicated scratch, everything was complicated all the time. The more I learned how to do shows and win over audiences, I learned that it's not only about being technical and complicated. You got to give them rhythms that they understand. So I started scratching in cadences and sort of repeating phrases with my scratching. So the way that I'll win an audience real quick is just grab a record they know, whatever's hot right now, and cut it in some sort of rhythm that they could bob their head to, and then I have their attention.
Good. That's I wanted to know from one performer to another. I mean, we all do the same thing in that respect, where the whole idea is, as soon as you get out there, you got 30 seconds. People say, you got one chance to make a first impression. Well, I always say you got 30 seconds to a minute to get your crowd to understand that you came to do the damn thing. What do you do?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's where we're at. I'm gonna flip it around though for you, A-Trak. Do you have any questions for the Sugarhill Gang?
Yes, I do. I mean, part of what's interesting with me with this whole journey of hip hop is just, how far things have gone, and like the milestones, and this culture reaching places that no one ever thought it would. So I guess my question for you is, what would be what's a memory of when Rappers Delight really blew up? What was something that happened, whether it be someone that you heard liked the record, or that they got somewhere where you thought, I never thought this record would go to here? Is there someone who said they liked it, or it's something that happened where you were surprised at how far hip hop got?
Okay, so Rappers Delight now is huge. It's everywhere, and I'm young, I'm flying through the wind, I come to the studio one day, fan mail. Back in those days, you got fan mail, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So like I would get hordes and hordes of fan mail from women all over the world. Oh, I think you're cute. Oh, So I get there one day and say, we got a letter you got to read, okay? So I said, okay, fine, whatever. I'm thinking it's some other girl. Because every now and then I would get the letter, and somebody's number. Back in those days, they would put the phone number in the letter, and I'd blow their mind and call them like, "Hey, this is Master J." Oh my God. Anyway, I get this letter. I'm reading the letter. It's got official like American U.S. Government stationery. So I'm like, wow, it's pretty impressive. I get to reading. I'm reading. And we really like the record. And blah blah blah. And it's Jimmy Carter's daughter. Jimmy Carter. I don't even remember the first name, but I'm reading it. I'm like, damn, blah, blah, blah. And they're saying Rappers Delight, and this is a crazy thing, blah, 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 blah. And it was Jimmy Carter's daughter, because during that time, Carter and them was president. So, he and that's when I was like, oh, snap, they're listening to my music in the White House.
In the White House.
In the White House. And to the point where she was so inspired that she had to write me a fan letter. So that was it. Yeah. But look,
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Thinking, well, obviously, like, you guys broke so much ground in terms of making hip hop accepted. I've heard a lot of stories about how even a lot of the radio DJs in those years didn't respect rapping, didn't take hip hop seriously.
True.
I mean, I don't even know if I have a specific question about that, but like, do you have something to say about that sort of generational clash? What it was like to come in with a different take on music that the older cats didn't even think was legitimate music.
Yes, and the thing about that was that I always felt walking into any situation that I was the elephant in the room. You know what I mean? It was like, it was always awkward. And the reason why it was so awkward is because, it's one thing when you're ushering in something and it's subtle. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, I have a chance to digest it on my own. I can kind of be in my own room or my own lab. Like, when you first learn how to scratch, you got to remember, we were so mega that not only was it awkward, and not only was it like mind blowing, but it was also doubters. It was also naysayers. It was also, people that really didn't want it to go. The traditional artists, they were, very, very bent out of shape. How could you be talking? That's not real. That's not an art form. My experience was always, and it kind of spoke to, just how I even developed as a person. I always felt like I was always awkward in the situation. And I always I always had to validate myself. That's why I would always give like extra. If I was given 100%, normally I'd give 110% in an interview, on stage, at a television performance. If I was just, interacting with fans, I always felt like I had to put my best foot forward because I was the weirdest thing in the situation. So yeah.
And people forget that. People look back at history, for better or for worse, kind of washes away some of the challenges and only remembers the the
The
line in the
liner
sand that
notes.
says,
Yeah, right.
right, that says this happened and this changed the game. But people forget that in order for that to even make a mark,
Yeah,
there was people who were against it, that fought tooth and nail against it. You
yeah.
know, guys, I also just a thought, like, you know, there's something I want to even tell all three of you, um, just as a general thought, because I have so much gratitude. I just want to say, like, hip hop, I feel like hip hop raised me. Like, hip hop is like a religion to me. Like, it's something that's been so important to my life. Um, and if anything, the more time goes by, the more I'm aware of how strong that of a role it's played beyond music. And you know, I kind of just want to grab this opportunity to verbalize that to you gentlemen, because you know, it's you paved the way. When I look back at even just my younger years, I think falling in love with hip hop and trying to participate it in the to participate in hip hop in the right way, in a respectful way, in a way that seemed in line with what I was hearing on the records and what I understood from them. You know, I absorbed a sort of code of conduct from hip hop, a code of ethics. I think hip hop had values to it, and hopefully still has now too. But you know, everything from you know, coming correct and being loyal to your crew, and but
Mm-hmm.
also calling out someone if they're being a sucker, like just
Mm-hmm.
standing for something, having standards,
Mm-hmm.
repping your crew, you know, and having honor, and even just all the way to, you know, that applies obviously to graffiti and the other elements too. Like
Yes.
there's
Right.
such a, you know, there's a code of honor that comes with hip hop that quickly became very important in my life. And when I look back to my younger years, I realized that I got that from the music. And so it's, you know, literally like, thank you, hip hop, because I feel like it helped me be a better person.
No. You welcome 100%. Diamond, you got something you want to chime in
You're
on?
listen, man, your thanks is what you've been doing. Your
Yeah.
thanks is that you're giving back that music,
Without a
You're
doubt.
Yeah,
perpetuating.
it-
You're perpetuating
right.
the energy, man, by doing
I try.
doing it on the level that you do it.
You're
But
another
listen,
Thank
branch
you.
of the tree.
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And that
Definitely. Definitely. Hey, definitely, man. I want to ask you about the record label Fool's Gold, with you and
mm-hmm.
you come into that, and what made you get into it, because I think it's a great way that you're giving back, you know, to what has been beneficial to yourself.
Thanks. Yes, I started Fool's Gold with a couple friends of mine, my partner Nick Catch Dubs and a few other friends, in 2007. And this was a point in time where I was starting to produce records more. The sound of the music that my friends and I were into was changing. We were experimenting with different tempos and kind of fusing in some electronic sounds into rap and hip hop. And meanwhile, at that point in time, the record industry as a whole was really sort of panicking because of the downloads and Napster and all this,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the internet. So all these labels didn't know what to do with music anymore. And a bunch of people around me, like literally my group of friends, were making what I thought was the most exciting music I'd heard in years. So we just sort of took it upon ourselves to start putting music out. We just thought, these big companies are panicking because of the internet, but we know how to use the internet, but we also know how to press vinyl. We could do either format. So we just, you know, started this operation of putting records out, and pretty quickly it became more than just a record label. We
Yes.
even on the first year of Fool's Gold, we did events and tours and started selling merch. Over the years, we opened our own store, and we ended up doing actual festivals. We have a franchise of festivals called Fool's Gold Day Off, sorry. And you know, with time, it became a platform and a way for me to share certain opportunities that come to me with other artists that I believe in. And that's been something that's been really validating and fun over the years. And then I end up being inspired by them, by the artists
Right.
that we sign, who are,
Right.
you know what it's like when you're around someone who's on their first wave of the come up, there's energy from that. So I love surrounding myself with kids who are on their way up. It keeps me motivated, and then I have
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
platform and
because they're
resources and
more hungry,
relationships that,
you know, when they come in from the
yeah.
street. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's become a way to, it also just kind of, it it gives me more to do than just my own DJing, and
Gotcha.
you know, that
Right.
keeps my life interesting in a sense.
I feel you on
Beautiful.
that.
Yeah.
Listen, A-Trak,
Yes.
5 artists that you have not worked with that you would love to work with.
Um,
Did she ever call you and say something about that?
You said Barbara Streisand?
Did she call you and say something about that?
You know what's funny? My group Duck Sauce, when we made the song Barbara Streisand, we wanted to get a hold of her, and for the first year or two, no one could reach her. And then eventually, I started hearing that she liked the record. I still have never met her, so I will include her in my 5 artists. I don't know what record I would make with her, but just because it's
Right.
you know.
Because it's Barbara
It's a whole-
Streisand, right?
It's Barbara
Yeah.
Streisand. I gotta meet her. So
Right,
her,
right.
But
Right.
I would love to work with Ghostface. I'm a huge Ghostface fan. But then, you know, I'm always really interested in younger artists too. There's one rapper that I really love from the last couple of years, JID. We actually started a song together a few years ago, but it never came out. So I'm gonna count it as something I haven't done yet. So still want to do that record with JID. Other artists that I'd love to work with, I mean, you know, I think it would be incredible to do something with, you know, with Rakim or someone like that. And you know what, DJ Premier,
Yeah.
he's a great friend of mine. I love to call him a friend, but we still haven't done something. I'd love to do something with him.
And
from Barbara Streisand to Primo,
and who else?
and the
What
Sugar
else?
Hill Gang.
Oh,
Whatever.
wow.
You're gonna ask him. Are you gonna ask him, or I'm gonna ask him? What do you think about Daft Punk breaking up? I'm just go to the core. I'm gonna hit you in the head.
You know, Daft Punk is one of the most important groups in my life. One of the groups that's influenced me the most.
Man.
And I will say, because we're all talking here in the context of hip hop, I've always found that the way they sampled was in the spirit of a hip hop producer too. They came in the game using MPCs and SP1200s, the same machines as hip hop producers were in those years. So they were chopping up records. They were just doing it at a faster tempo. But you know, so you know, one of the groups that's influenced me the most, and I was lucky to get to know them over the years too. They haven't been very active in the last couple of years. So as far as this announcement of them breaking up, you know, time will tell what that actually means, because it's, you know, it's not, for all intents and purposes, they weren't putting out a lot of records lately. But if it's a pretext to look back and sort of say thanks to the robots, then yep, thank you, robots.
Right.
They took it to another level.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And with that being said, you know, our feeling and our thoughts have always been that, you know, if we're the roots of this thing, these roots have turned into a tree. This tree has turned into limbs. The limbs have turned into leaves, and the leaves continue to turn into other trees, and so forth and so on. And it continues to flourish. And it like the leaf will blow over, and it'll end up in Russia, and it's ended up in, you know, Hong Kong, and it's ended up in India. You know, I talked to a guy the other day. He was from the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. You know, I mean, it's amazing how this thing continues to go on. So I want to say this to you, and I want to make sure I say this to you before we get out of it, because I know we're all working on what we're working on. As of right now, you being the person that you are, you have now been officially inducted into the Sugarhill Gang family. You are now part of our family, A-Trak. When we call you Cuzzo, when we see you, we say, "What's up, Cuzzo?" You got to respond back to us, man, and say, "Cuzzo, what's up?" And I just want to thank you, man, for all that you do. I want to thank you for all that you are, and I want to thank you for all that you're going to become. You know what I mean? And with that being said, we're going to roll up out of here. This is the Sugarhill Gang Podcast. I'm your host, the Master G. I'm also joined by my man. Say goodnight, T Dynasty.
Good night, T Dynasty.
Say goodnight, Hand Dog.
Good night, world.
Hand Dog. A-Trak, say goodnight,
gentlemen.
Cuzzo.
Thank
say
you.
goodnight.
Good night, Cuzzo.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you, y'all.
man.
This is the
I
Sugarhill
know
Gang.
we didn't have time to talk about it, but maybe next time we'll talk about Fool's Gold. I think that's a great thing that you're doing too as well with the record label.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'd
That's
love
right,
to
y'all.
work with you
Peace.
in the future.
Yep.
This is the Sugarhill Gang Podcast. I'm your host, the Master G. We love you for loving us. Peace, y'all. And we are.